From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin tonight with all the hostages still being held in the Middle East. A month of quiet diplomacy led by the UN Secretary General may be paying off. A month ago, after the release of the American hostage, Edward Tracer, Javier Perez de Cuellar renewed his diplomatic efforts. Today, the first results. The Israelis this morning handed over the bodies of 9 guerrilla fighters and freed 51 Lebanese prisoners who had been in jail under Israeli control. We begin with ABC's Dean Reynolds.
The coffins came first. 9 bodies of Lebanese guerrillas who had been killed fighting the Israelis in 1987. Then, hours later, Israel freed 51 Lebanese detainees, including 5 women, sending them back to their villages with broad smiles and $50. The Israelis released the prisoners and the bodies only after confirmation of what officials had long ago conceded, that 2 Israeli army privates, both abducted on patrol in Lebanon 5 years ago, were dead. But 7 Israeli soldiers have been missing, and officials here continue to insist in public that the 5 remaining are alive until proven otherwise, even though there is genuine hope for only 1. Despite the sobering news, the Israelis saw today's exchange in a positive light with potentially broad significance.
Some move has taken place, and therefore we've made this gesture, which, as a matter of fact, we hope will also enhance the release of the Western hostages.
The Israelis said they are willing to make another gesture if UN Secretary General Perez de Cuellar, who is now in Iran working on the hostage problem, gives them a reason.
Well, the breakthrough is in the hands of the Secretary General and of some of the states in the area. It is not in our hands.
Sources here say Israel is expecting further information on its missing men this week. If so, they say another Israeli gesture will surely follow, and the overall hostage dilemma may move that much closer to a resolution. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Tel Aviv.
In Lebanon today, the most powerful Islamic religious leader said that because the Israelis have released some of the Lebanese prisoners, there is now a better possibility that the Western hostages will finally be let go. Sheikh Mohammed Fadlallah, who was always denied knowing about hostages, which no one ever believed, said the atmosphere is now better, as it apparently also is in Iran. ABC's Charles Glass is there.
The UN Secretary General's first day of meetings with Iran's leaders was part of Perez de Cuellar's attempt to prove something to Iran, namely that the UN could persuade Israel to respond to last month's release of a British and an American hostage. When the proof came, the Secretary General was more optimistic than ever.
I could tell you that my first steps are intended to obtain the freeing of all detainees and missing persons.
Do you have a timetable?
Well, my timetable is tomorrow.
Tomorrow may be too optimistic, but sources involved in the negotiations believe that if de Cuellar succeeds, all the Western hostages could be home in a few weeks. The same sources have told ABC News, first, that they could confirm that after weeks of insisting it had no information on any of the 7 missing Israeli soldiers in Lebanon, Iran did give that information to Israel through the UN. Second, that Israel finally answered requests via the UN for news of the husbands and fathers of these Iranian families who met Perez de Cuellar today. They have been seeking some word on 4 Iranian diplomats who were kidnapped in Lebanon by a pro-Israeli militia in 1982. And finally, that the next phase of discussions should focus on exchanges of the 10 remaining Western hostages held by a pro-Iranian militia for Lebanese held by Israel, rather than on missing Israelis and Iranians. Negotiations for the release of hostages in Lebanon appear to be gathering momentum. The UN Secretary General continues his negotiations with the Iranians, who have to decide whether or not to respond to today's Israeli gesture. Charles Glass, ABC News, Tehran.
One other piece of Middle East news before we go on. President Bush denied today an Israeli newspaper report that he secretly agreed to support $10 billion in U.S. government loan guarantees for Israel to resettle Soviet Jews. Mr. Bush again asked the Congress to delay consideration of the Israeli request until after an Arab-Israeli peace conference. In a moment, Judge Thomas withstands more questions about abortion. On the American agenda tonight, one solution in Belgium to the problem of not enough organs available for transplant. And the boxer Mike Tyson goes to court on charges of rape. Will he also go into the ring?
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Just for Men Hair Color.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered this 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
Reintroducing a glorious name for a glorious new automobile. The 1992 Buick Roadmaster. With its powerful V8 performance and the security of its driver's airbag, anti-lock brakes, and full perimeter frame, Roadmaster is perhaps the best value in an American luxury sedan. Roadmaster also delivers something only a Buick can deliver. Buick quality.
In Washington, this is the second day of confirmation hearings for Judge Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. It's been another day of Democratic senators trying and failing to pin him down as to what he feels about the question of abortion. One of the only things Judge Thomas would be specific about today was his favorite football team. In Washington, here's our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien.
But it was to be a tough morning for the Supreme Court nominee, with the committee's most liberal member continuing to press him for an answer on abortion rights.
I want to ask you once again, appealing to your sense of compassion, to whether or not you believe the Constitution protects a woman's right to abortion.
I think that to take a position would undermine my ability to be impartial.
I'm just asking you whether you believe that the Constitution protects a woman's right to choose to terminate her pregnancy.
I believe the Constitution protects the right to privacy. And I have no reason or agenda to prejudge the issue.
Senator Metzenbaum accused Thomas of changing his positions in order to win Senate approval. In the past, Thomas had suggested that under a theory called natural law, a natural right to life might prohibit abortion. But yesterday, Thomas testified that court rulings should not be based on natural law. Metzenbaum called that a confirmation conversion.
We don't know if the Judge Thomas who has been speaking and writing throughout his adult life is the same man up for confirmation before us today.
I understand your concern that people come here and they might tell you A and then do B. But I have no agenda.
Thomas succeeded in being extraordinarily non-committal. His bravest concession may have been a light-hearted one. When it comes to professional football, he prefers the Dallas Cowboys to the Washington Redskins.
To have you in this nest of Redskin fans to be a Dallas Cowboy fan certainly discloses a degree of independence which will serve you very well on the court.
Rooting for Dallas in Washington may be as brave as Thomas needs to get. The committee has never rejected a nominee solely because of his failure to disclose how he would vote on abortion or any other single issue. Thomas and his backers are betting it won't start here. Tim O'Brien, ABC News on Capitol Hill.
In another hearing room on Capitol Hill today, another hearing about BCCI, the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. Today's witnesses, the longtime Washington insider Clark Clifford and his partner Robert Altman. Mr. Clifford was the chairman of an American bank, First American Bank Shares. And the House Banking Committee wants to know how BCCI could have taken over the company without Mr. Clifford knowing about it. Here's ABC's John Martin.
After months of unanswered questions and accusations, one of the grand old men of the Democratic Party, Clark Clifford, advisor to presidents, was appearing under oath to defend himself. Even members of his own party had difficulty believing that Clifford and his law partner, Robert Altman, were deceived by officials of BCCI about who really owned their bank.
My heart wants to believe you. My head says no. It didn't dawn on you that maybe that BCCI wanted to control First American? That's what is so puzzling about all of this.
You're mystified by this. Let me suggest to you, I am mystified by the actions of BCCI. What did BCCI have in mind? Why did they accumulate the stock that they did in secret?
You say you're mystified. The facts are that you report it regularly to BCCI on the operation of your bank.
Because these men were the representatives of the owners of the property. Because almost every month they go to the Middle East and report to the owners. The shareholders are our owners. They are our bosses. And we need to report to them.
Several congressmen accused Clifford and Altman of unethical conduct for playing dual roles as officers of First American and lawyers for BCCI. But despite all that skepticism, the committee was still unable to prove that Clifford and Altman had done anything wrong. John Martin, ABC News, Washington.
Still in Washington, one of the more listened to advocacy groups on the subject of food and nutrition, Public Voice for Food and Health Policy, says the nation's 42 million elementary school children are getting too much fat and cholesterol in their school lunches. And the government agrees. The Agriculture Secretary now promises a new effort to teach both children and the people who plan school lunches about better nutrition. Another new study on the treatment of alcoholism. At the Harvard School of Public Health, they now find that people who are sent for an extended stay in a hospital are more successful at overcoming their addiction than those who join outpatient programs like Alcoholics Anonymous. The study in tomorrow's New England Journal of Medicine appears to contradict earlier studies which found both forms of treatment equally effective. There is another report in the New England Journal today that confirms the potentially dramatic benefits for older women who take the hormone estrogen. Heart disease is the leading killer of women over 50. The researchers say that taking estrogen may reduce their risk. Here's ABC's Bob James.
It is the largest study ever of women who take estrogen to ease the effects of menopause. The study of nearly 50,000 nurses nationwide concluded that those who take estrogen cut their risk of heart disease in half. While the doctors could not say exactly why, they believe estrogen reduces the cholesterol that blocks arteries. Use of estrogen therapy has long been controversial because the hormone has been linked to uterine cancer, and there are suspicions it can increase the risk of breast cancer. But doctors who conducted this 10-year survey said the risk of getting cancer with estrogen is lower than the chance of developing heart disease without it.
For the average woman, the benefits greatly outweigh the risks. However, no woman is average. Each woman has to weigh the risks and benefits according to her own circumstances with the help of her physician.
Now, only about 15% of women who reach menopause take estrogen. Some physicians believe that with this new study, that could increase dramatically. Bob Jameson, ABC News, New York.
For the first time today, the government has issued national standards for landfills. When they take effect in 2 years, all new landfills will have to contain protective liners to keep pollutants from leaking. They will also be required to monitor nearby groundwater for leaks of any dangerous chemicals. In southeast Texas today, a Continental Express commuter plane crashed into a cornfield. All 14 people on the flight from Laredo to Houston were killed. Witnesses say the plane appeared to be on fire as it came down. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 4.5 points to close at 2987, and the trading was moderate. When we come back, the Soviet-Cuban connection. Soviet troops will be going home from Cuba.
Why put up with glasses that just don't fit? LensCrafters has so many ways to fit your snug points, like snug fit pads that flex to comfortably hug your nose. LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
Poison ivy, insect bites, rashes. Too many choices.
You only need one. Cordade.
Stop the itch and heal the rash with a brand doctors recommend most.
Present Arms.
Cordade, the only aid you need.
You're about to see the product of a relentless commitment to quality. It started in the 80s and continues to build. Last April, Ford Motor Company unveiled the all-new 92 Mercury Grand Marquis and Ford Crown Victoria. And the innovation continues. In fact, 92 is our biggest new model announcement in years. September 26th at your Ford and Lincoln Mercury dealer. Amazing things happen when you make quality job one.
I put off going to the doctor. But this burning stomach kept waking me up at night. Finally, I just went. I can imagine how relieved I was when my doctor said, Mylanta. He said I had heartburn. And heartburn like mine needed a strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Now available in cherry and cool mint cream flavors.
In Moscow today, another example of how the Soviet Union wishes to please the United States. After 30 years of Soviet military assistance to Cuba, Mikhail Gorbachev says the military relationship will come to an end. ABC's John McCarthy is in Moscow.
Like old political buddies, they huddled in an adjoining room before going public with what President Gorbachev had promised Secretary Baker.
I told the Secretary that we will soon begin discussion with the Cuban leadership about the withdrawal of a Soviet training brigade.
In fact, U.S. officials say that Gorbachev pledged to withdraw the entire Soviet military presence from Cuba, the 3,000-man training brigade, plus 1,500 military advisors and an estimated 2,000 Soviet specialists who man a huge listening post. There are indications Gorbachev also promised to stop selling Cuba jet fighters and other weapons. Though the Soviets will continue economic ties to Havana, today's announcement was a welcome surprise for Baker.
I think it is a very substantial gesture. And I think it points up exactly what President Gorbachev and I have both said here this morning, and that is that there are new opportunities.
What Gorbachev and Russian Republic President Boris Yeltsin are trying to do, of course, is to remove irritants in the U.S.-Soviet relationship. Both men know if there is ever to be large-scale economic help from the West, then radical changes like dumping Cuba as a military client are the kind of gestures they must make without flinching. John McCarthy, ABC News, Moscow.
The Soviet Union made an urgent appeal for food today. It has asked the European community to send quickly more than $7 billion worth of various foodstuffs, including nearly 6 pounds of meat for every Soviet man, woman, and child. The European community says it is considering the request. And another note, 10 of the 14 men charged with leading the coup to overthrow Mikhail Gorbachev have pleaded not guilty to treason charges today. The 4 others have pleaded guilty to at least some of the charges. The government of the Netherlands has announced that the next year's International Conference on AIDS, which was supposed to be held in the United States, will take place in Amsterdam. Harvard University canceled the conference, you may recall, because U.S. policy restricts the entry into the U.S. of people who have the AIDS virus. When we come back, the American agenda.
When I go on vacation, I love going out at night to shows, dancing the night away, enjoying great nightclub entertainment. And on this vacation, I can enjoy everything without cover charges, minimums, or even reservations, because it's all included. But what I really like about the nightlife here is that tomorrow night, I can see another great new show as we sail away to another great new place. Take a 3, 4, 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
What if you suddenly found that up to 50% of everything you own had vanished? Gone to pay taxes. Fortunately for your family, there's Merrill Lynch Estate Planning and Business Succession Services. So this is a nightmare that doesn't have to come true.
Today, there's a prescription-strength cure for athlete's foot. Lotramin AF, the #1 prescribed athlete's foot medication available without a prescription. Lotramin AF, the prescription-strength cure for athlete's foot.
When you get gas pain, which would you choose? Your antacid or Gas-X, the tablet made for gas pain? It's extra strength, 100% simethicone to get rid of gas faster than your antacid. Fight gas right with Gas-X.
It's a car born of intelligent engineering. It's 100,000 ideas fused into one. It's responsive, innovative, refined. It's a driver's side airbag and anti-lock brakes. Introducing the all-new 88 Royale LS. Oldsmobile, the power of intelligent engineering.
On the American agenda, we take a second look tonight at how healthy organs might be better made available to people who need them. Last night we explained that most people say they wish to donate their organs when they die, but 75% of their families, at a time of obvious emotional distress, end up saying no. The question is how to get around that family opposition. Our medical editor, Tim Johnson, has gone to Belgium, where they appear to have found a way.
In a hospital near Antwerp, Belgium, a human drama unfolds. A woman in her 50s has died of a stroke, and in an operating room, surgeons are removing organs that will give new or improve life to several different people. For the next 8 hours, surgical teams will take out her corneas, kidneys, her liver, and her heart. After the heart is removed, wrapped in plastic bags, and then packed in ice, the transplant team races out of the operating room. Time is critical. Once the heart is removed, it must be transplanted in less than 4 hours. A recipient has been identified in Alst, a nearby town, and he is already in surgery being readied for the new heart. When the journey ends, the life-saving organ is delivered to the operating room, where it will be transplanted into a 52-year-old man.
Start to exercise with the right edge.
Unfortunately, in the United States, scenes like this are all too rare. Too many patients who need them can't get organs, often because surviving families of potential donors say no. But here in Belgium, a new approach is being tried, which takes the decision out of the hands of the family. And it seems to be working. In fact, people living in Belgium have a much greater chance of getting an organ donation than people living in many other countries. That's because since 1986, Belgium has had a presumed consent law, which says that unless you take the time during your life to go to a local town hall and say no to organ donation, when you die, your organs can be taken without any further permission. That means that when a potentially suitable organ donor dies in Belgium, transplant teams will check a national computer file to find out whether the person has registered his opposition during life. If not, doctors can proceed to remove needed organs. Constant public education reminds people of the law, and only about 2% of the population registers to say no. According to heart surgeon Dr. Hugo Vannerman, the presumed consent law has changed the climate for transplantation.
The big difference is that we can tell to the family, to the close family of the patient, that we're going to do organ transplantation, rather than to ask them if they permit to proceed to organ transplantation.
Families rarely object, but when they do, their wishes are usually honored. As this graph shows, the transplant rate did go up in Belgium beginning in 1986 when the law was passed. The waiting list for organs has actually declined slightly, while the list is growing in the U.S. Which raises the question, why not explore presumed consent in the U.S., where 22,000 people like these are waiting for transplanted organs? Critics say the Belgian system would never work in the U.S. They say Belgium is a small country with a population which is more willing to accept government regulation.
We just don't have the kind of docile population in the United States who will accept a rule on something that's terribly private and that really remains their individual privilege.
But proponents say presumed consent deserves a chance.
If we can save more lives using presumed consent, we should do it. It's as simple as that.
In polls, most Americans say they want to donate, but too few organs are actually given at the time of death. Critics may question Americans' willingness to accept presumed consent, but the Belgian experience suggests it is a viable solution that can bridge the gap between supply and need. Dr. Timothy Johnson, ABC News, Brussels.
The American Agenda for today. We'll be back in just a moment.
Farragran wants to know, what did you do today? Farragran M, fine-tuned for the way you live.
Pain from just one sensitive tooth can start the domino effect. Pain can make you stop brushing, lead to plaque buildup, gingivitis, periodontal disease, even tooth loss. Sensodyne toothpaste helps stop the pain and the domino effect.
Extra Strength Maalox Plus, the strongest antacid there is, now comes in extra strength tablets. Stronger than Tums, stronger than Rolaids. New Extra Strength Maalox Plus, now in tablets.
My doctor told me it's the strongest.
My stomach tells me it's fast.
Once again, Buick is raising the banner for quality in America. Introducing the 1992 LeSabre with a higher level of power, safety, security, and convenience. This new LeSabre is going to be one tough act to follow. LeSabre for 1992 from Buick.
We bake pearls made of denture material in this blueberry pie to prove how powerfully Efferdent, America's leading denture cleanser, removes this tough stain, even in between. Efferdent, stronger than stains.
Tonight on Nightline with Ted Koppel, Israel releases 51 prisoners captured in Lebanon. Could this be the key to freedom for the Western hostages? Tonight.
Finally here this evening, the fighter Mike Tyson. He has pleaded not guilty today to charges that he raped an 18-year-old woman last July. Tyson, who is free on bail, told reporters the charges were totally ridiculous, and yes, he will be back in the ring this fall. This is the way I make my living, he said, which has contributed to a fairly heated debate. Here's ABC's Dick Schaap.
The fight is definitely on. The fight between those who say Mike Tyson should not be allowed to fight heavyweight champion Evander Holyfield, and those who say Tyson, who insisted upon his innocence when he was booked in Indianapolis today, should be allowed to fight until proven guilty.
He shouldn't be stripped of any of his property rights or his right to fight. I mean, that's I think, a given.
Sure, he's innocent until proven guilty, but what kind of a message does this send to men? That it's okay to abuse women?
If boxing had any decency, which it is very much lacking, they would not have this fight.
But boxing is about money, and the only people who could stop the fight, the boxers, Holyfield and Tyson, the promoters, Dan Duva and Don King, and the Nevada State Athletic Commission, which has sanctioned the bout for Las Vegas in November, all have millions at stake. Every indication is that the fight will go on, and ironically, Tyson's indictment could make it an even richer event. Tyson has survived reform school, an ugly divorce, and accusations of fondling women, the most recent by this former Miss Black America. But if he is convicted of rape, he faces up to 63 years in prison. But for today, Tyson remained a tarnished hero. Fans cheering him inside the courthouse, and pickets taunting him outside. Dick Schaap, ABC News.
That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.